There's been more upheaval in the world of radio today, with Brisbane's 4BC announcing a major programming shakeup after another bad survey. Dean Miller and Sofie Formica will be replaced by Jason Matthews, who will move from mornings to breakfast. Gary Hardgrave will move from drive to mornings. Michael McLaren will be networked from 2GB in the afternoon shift, replacing the local show, which was hosted by Carla Bignasca. With Gary Hardgrave moving from drive to mornings, he will be replaced from the now former host of afternoons, Carla. Now, Step Outside with Paul Bird has been axed and will be replaced by the Garden Clinic from 2GB. With afternoons and the weekend breakfast show now being networked from Sydney, there will be job losses. Station Manager Siobhain Ryan told staff in an email, these changes will have an impact on our programming teams, including a reduction of some local roles. We are currently working through the impact and will consult with individual employees over the coming days. Now, there is a lot to unpack here, so I've asked Mr. Brisbane, Brett Debritz, to share his insights. Brett, welcome to McKnight Tonight.
Hello there, Rob.
Mate, the big bosses at 4BC had kept saying the station would remain live and local. I guess that's no longer happening.
It's not, and the phrase now is that it will be live and local where sustainable. That's what Tom Malone,
they've actually said that.
The CEO, has said today. Where sustainable, yes.
Well, what does that mean? I mean, that means that it could essentially become a network station.
It means, I guess, how the finances plan out. I mean, the presumption is that it wasn't sustainable, or it isn't sustainable at the moment, to be completely live and local during the daytime. So, as you said, they're taking one show from Sydney, the afternoon show, and they're taking the weekends now. So the entire weekend will come from 2GB. And, of course, I worked at 4BC at the same time you did, and we did local programs on the weekends. The programs that I produced no longer exist, and now we've got the Garden Clinic. And I don't know anything about gardening, but people who do tell me they have concerns. Particularly during daylight saving, they may not be able to get their calls answered, and that the experts in Sydney may not know as much about subtropical gardening as they have here. I mean, but there are a lot of issues, as you say, to work through here, what's going on at 4BC. And it's just been one disaster after another. We've had, I've counted them, 6 breakfast shows in 6 years.
Wow.
So from Alan Jones to Neil Breen to Laurie Garrow Mark to Peter Fegan to Dean and Sofie, and now it will be Jason Matthews. And as Spencer Housen said there, 6 months isn't really a long time for a show to bed in. The rule of thumb used to be 2 years. Nobody gets 2 years anymore.
No, that's true. And look, you mentioned it. Both you and I have worked at 4BC. I worked with Sofie. I was her executive producer on afternoons. I was her fill-in presenter as well. And got to say, the ratings were much better then. And Brett, where do you think it's gone wrong?
Well, I think the decisions have been made in Sydney. I'm told the latest decisions were made in Brisbane, but obviously if it's involving networking again, it is a network decision. We've got new management now, but things have, they've only been in place for a couple of months. Tap Media, which is the Laundy family. Nine knew that they couldn't get it right in Brisbane, and also the rumour is that they weren't making any money. They took a bath on it, on the sale of the network. And as far as Sydney and Melbourne goes, yes, they've had very high-rating shows, but they've also been very expensive shows. People like Ben Fordham in Sydney, Ross and Russell in Melbourne, they earn a lot of money. I don't know what the financial equation is, but getting back to that statement about sustainability, presumably they're talking about the bottom line financially. It's very expensive. We're going to point out here that the talk radio is a very expensive medium because you've got the people behind the microphone, you've got the producers, and if you're doing it live and local all day, you've got a lot of people on site, a lot more than is involved in doing, say, a breakfast show alone, which is what most of the FM stations do, and then everything else is networked.
Sure,
So,
and there will be job losses, as we've seen. On the financials, that's interesting because when I was the EP of afternoons, I was on a bonus structure based on revenue, not ratings. It was based on revenue. And Sophie and I, when I was there, always got our bonuses because we met revenue targets. We were in profit.
yeah. Well, there's all sorts of rumours going around. Somebody messaged me the other day saying that they only had one local client in Brisbane, which I find very difficult to believe, one client. But yeah, I mean, we forget it's a business. We like to think of it as a source of entertainment or information, but the bottom line is, you know, they're not in it for fun. They're in it to make money. Now, the Tapped Media, the Laundry family, had picked this whole network up for 56 million, which is a couple of $100 million less than Nine paid for it. And we know that radio is doing badly. We know that revenues are down across the board. We know that the value of ARN and SCA have both dropped. We don't know what's going on in Nova because it's a private company, but the share prices tell the story for the other two. It's a tough business at the moment, and there are people eating their lunch. In particular, the internet is eating their lunch. Shows like yours, very good shows that don't rely on expensive. You're doing it from your garage. They're doing it from studios. They have an AM tower. They're very expensive to maintain. They have they don't have license fees anymore. There's been a moratorium, but there's a lot of expenses built in to the radio business, and maybe the numbers are not stacking up, but it becomes a sort of self-fulfilling things. You're not making money because you haven't got the audience, but if you're going to diminish the product, well, then you're not going to get the audience and you're not going to make the money.
All right, this is where it gets interesting because Sophie and Dean had only been in the breakfast slot since February. Now,
Yes.
Spencer has made the point that they haven't been given enough time. Do you agree? Because what do you do? There were no signs of growth, were there? They were going down.
Well, that's the problem. The problem was there was just nothing there. The numbers were just going down. I mean, the same thing happened with Peter Fegan, and I think at the time he said he knew when he got below a certain rating that he was gone. And
I did a headline saying the latest rating results, someone will be fired, and I meant him.
Yeah, but they've not recovered. They've only just got lower and lower, and that's not the only program in trouble. I mean, you look at the Sports Tonight program; it sometimes gets less than 1% share.
Jeez, well, actually, talking about that, I've got a graphic here, Brett, that I think you'll find interesting because 4BC did suffer across the board in the last survey. Breakfast had a 3.2% share. That was down 0.5. Mornings was the best in daytime with a 3.9 share, but down 0.9. Afternoons had a shocking result, just 2.9%. That's down 1.3. Drive could only manage a 2.6. That was down 0.4. And nights was the best of a bad bunch, which all comes from Sydney, with a 4.1% share. So based on that, see, to me, you can't keep doing the same thing if it's going to get the same result. You sort of have to make changes, don't you?
Well, I think that's true. They had to make changes, but the point seems to me is that this is a knee-jerk reaction to that, and they've said it's only temporary. They've said it will be until the end of the year. What they're planning for next year, I don't know. The Australian reported in the media diary on Monday that they were testing people, including Mike Goldman, who's well known as the voice of Big Brother. Bianca Dye's name's been thrown around. Erin Holland, a few other people have been in and out of the studios. We know that they have a roster of backup announcers. Maybe some of them are being tested, but it just seems that there's no real plan. And I think it shouldn't just be the talent that should be they should be looking at. I think it's probably the format as well. Does Brisbane need or want a commercial talk radio station? They have to ask that question because the ABC is not doing all that well either. I did some. There was a time when between them, the ABC, 612 ABC and 4BC, were getting something like approaching a third of the total audience. Now between them, they're lucky to get 10%. So where have all those listeners gone? A good number of the older listeners who were listening to 4BC have gone to 4BH, which is run on the smell of an oily rag, barbecue Bob Gallagher.
That's an amazing story. 4BH, owned by, Tapped, was 9, owned by Tapped Radio. They lease it off to another company, and it's literally done from a garage like McKnight Tonight is, and it's like one of the top
he's
stations.
up there. He's in the top 3 in the breakfast show, and overall I think they're number 2 this survey, and it literally is just golden oldies on this radio like it used to be done in the 70s and 80s, and it's succeeding. And so there's a lot of people maybe just saying, look, we get our talk, we get our and particularly the talk format. You can watch on YouTube or listen to a podcast where you've got somebody who's not only talking to you, but you can instantaneously talk back, and you can become involved, and you can get online and make your own YouTube video and have your own rant. Maybe that's a little bit more attractive to the people who used to listen to talk radio. Maybe talk radio is dying a death.
But then you look at Melbourne and Sydney, and it's not. It's the number 1 station. Here's the thing, and look, I need to declare, because it's hard for me to talk about this without saying this. When 4BC was having the problems with breakfast, I did pitch myself to be with Sophie, because whenever we appeared on air, I was doing entertainment. I felt we had great chemistry. Putting my producer's hat on, we had great chemistry. We challenged each other. We took the piss out of each other. They went a different way. But I still think Brisbane is more attuned to the way Melbourne does breakfast, with that lighter touch with a bit of talk. And then in mornings, you go the hard talk, because Jason has done very well in mornings. He had the highest share of the day part. But what do you think? Put your programming hat on. What would you do with 4BC?
But has he done well? He's only done well compared to how badly they're doing in general. Remember,
but how do you do that? Because isn't everything led by breakfast?
He was getting an 11, and the thing about having an entertaining breakfast show, well, they did that with Laurel, Gary, and Mark. And with Laurel Edwards, Gary, Claire, Mark Hine, they brought their show basically over from 4KQ, which was sold and became Sen. Now, that show relied on having music in it. The bosses in Sydney didn't like having music in their show. They also didn't like it just being fluff and bubble. They wanted it to be taken more serious. They were told to change their shtick. They changed their shtick, and the ratings started to tank. But the person who replaced them, Peter Fegan, his ratings were lower, and then again, Dean and Sophie's ratings were lower again. And the idea at the time behind putting Dean and Sophie in was to lighten it up a bit. Well, that didn't work. Now, whether that's a matter of chemistry and whether it would have worked better.
I didn't listen to much of it. Did they have chemistry? Because you can't just say that format didn't work if they didn't have chemistry. Ross and Russ have chemistry. Did Sophie and Dean? And I didn't listen. I couldn't.
I don't think they did, and I think that was a big problem. And I think that another combination may have worked. But it just seems that all the way along they've been changing, but they haven't thought through the change. And arguably, maybe it was better not to make the changes that they've made now, unless it's just to get 2 expensive, or 3, including Paul Burt, talent off the books because they wanted to save money, plus a couple of producers. Let's not forget that other people are going to lose their jobs as well.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the idea. And let's just kick it along and see what happens. But they've got to have a plan. And the number one thing they've got to get away from this notion that Brisbane is like Sydney. It's not. Every decision they've made to make it like Sydney has backfired. And I think that they've got to look at what worked for them, because initially, when they stopped networking, programs are doing well. Neil Breen was doing well. He was sustaining the same ratings that Alan Jones got. The weekend show that I helped create and produce, the Weekend Breakfast and the weekend with Bill McDonald, and the weekend show with Spencer Housen, we rated well. We rated above the station average. In fact, at one point, the Weekend Breakfast show was the number one show on, in terms of rating share, not necessarily cumulative audience, because weekend audience numbers are lower in general. We got up to double figures. I think on Sunday in the last survey, it was 2 point something for the Step Outside show, a show about fishing and boating at a time when people who are into fishing and boating are out fishing and boating. I mean, that just didn't make any sense whatsoever, to put a show for people who like dropping a line on at a time when they're out doing the thing that they enjoy. Replacing it with the garden clinic. Again, gardening very popular. Good time to do a gardening show, because the ABC's long-term gardening contributor, Annette McFarlane, has just retired. So there might be some sort of movement in the audience there. But it just seems to me that none of the decisions that they've made have been thought through, and that they really just have to go right back to basics. And I'm sorry to say it, because I grew up listening to 4BC. I worked for 4BC. I enjoyed listening to that station as I grew up, and I enjoyed working for that station for the time that I was there. And it saddens me to say, but maybe they just have to look at it and say, this whole thing is not working. Brisbane audiences don't want this. They want something else. Well, it means just maybe doing, saying, well, 4BH is doing pretty well with the bloke sitting in his garage with a microphone playing some music. I don't know. Except that what they've done in the past, and I think this may still be the case, is they're not doing research. And when they do research, they're not looking at what it says to them. And I was in a meeting at 4BC where some research said something which management didn't agree with, and they decided to ignore the research. So, what's the point in doing that?
Yeah, research is only good if you research is no good if you only want it to reinforce your existing beliefs.
Well, and I think that's what they wanted to do. They were so confident because of the success that it had in Sydney and the success they'd had in Melbourne, that they knew what it was all about. And the proof in the pudding is they didn't have the answers. And I think that's very sad, because I think, and I know this is the case, that people were told to do certain things because this is the way you do it, when if perhaps they'd been allowed to be themselves, to create a Brisbane type of radio, a Brisbane type of talk radio, it may have succeeded. But it's no matter what happens now, it's such a long way back. This is why I'm saying that maybe the whole format needs to be re-examined. If the answer is networking, that's only a short-term solution as well. Because if you're just 2GB on relay, why do you need a studio and a transmitter tower and whatever, when people can actually now just listen to 2GB on streaming? If they're going to have a 4BC, it's got to offer something that's unique.
Yeah.
And something that's targeted towards the people in Brisbane.
Yeah, I agree. Brett, your insights are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on McKnight tonight. We'll have to get you on again when there's lots to talk about regarding radio or anything Brisbane, actually. Thank you, Mr. Brisbane.
Thank you.